After building the cargo and passenger port last time, we still have one place on the coastline of the space elevator bay that needs to be finished. So let's go connect the two previous projects to finally have that part of the city completely complete. We will build some extension of the high density areas closer to the center, and we must gradually end that into some lower density outskirts. There is also a train station to be built, but most importantly, we need to connect the tram line right on the coastline. So let's build some very nice scenery around it, just a tropical coastline with beaches, palms, rocks, and make it have a beautiful view of the space elevator and the rest of the city. So let's go. So this is one of those projects where I really just need to wrap up some kind of area between different projects. And as usual, I kind of miscalculated the scale of this empty spot. So it's actually going to be quite a huge project today. I need to fill like a really big area, but at the same time, it's not really that big to just split it into multiple parts. So we are just going to fill all of this in one go and build all kinds of things, really. We are going to do this infrastructure on the coastline for the trams, all the nature, all the high density stuff closer to that previous project, the previous project, and then some low density as well, a train station, like I said. So pretty much everything really is going to happen in today's episode. Right, so I'm going to start with this infrastructure on the coastline because this is basically the main definition of this area. So there needs to be some continuation of the main roads that are like further away from the water and then closer to the water. There needs to be the tram line and some kind of continuation of that, like a waterfront promenade or something that is originating at that bridge from 2 building episodes back, or 3, I think 2. And well, it just needs to go somewhere. So I decided that it's going to end by that new tram station, one of the 2 tram stations that we're going to do today. And it's, simply going to end into some kind of like a beach area and just some natural places at the end of this like a higher density area. Right, so this is just me doing that infrastructure in the beginning. By the way, there was some kind of a bug with this particular road that I'm doing here, and every single time I did something around it, the game just crashed. So what I'm doing right here, this intersection marking tools, I think I had to do it like 4 times over because every single time the game just crashed at like a random moment after I finished some kind of detailing. So this was a very tedious project and it took a really, really long time. So this is kind of like stitched together, this time lapse from multiple building sessions, and I'm kind of going a little bit faster through some of these things because, well, I already did them a couple of times before. So I'm not really experimenting all that much. I'm basically just rebuilding what I already had here. Or maybe some of these time-lapse shots are actually like before the crash and then I just rebuilt it. So, some things might be a little bit different in the finished thing in the cinematics compared to what you see in the time-lapse because I obviously was not able to do all the things exactly like I did them in the first take. But anyway, so the basic idea is that in here we have some sort of like a road with trams that's originating in that plaza from 2 building episodes back. And then I'm just going to extend this road all the way here, and it's just going to split. The trams are going to split from the road, and the road is just going to continue. It's going to be some kind of small outskirts road, really, nothing all that important. And the trams will just continue on the coastline as some sort of a light rail, really disconnected. So it's going to go faster, and it's going to be able to have that scenery around it right on the coastline. So actually kind of something similar to, for example, that tram ride video where it was going on the beach, on the main downtown beach, where it's also just, doing its own thing, disconnected from the roads and everything else. And, well, there is some natural stuff all around it. So that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve over here. But this time we are going to mostly focus on the viewing angles so that it's going to see the space elevator and the rest of the city. Because of course, if you imagine this tram line, by the way, I am going to record this particular ride in some future going into the downtown from this direction. So it would go parallel to the space elevator base coastline, and it would not really see the space elevator, right? So I had to make sure to do these kinds of like curves and little tunnels and just these places where the tram is at one point going to go perpendicular to the bay, to the coastline of the bay. So it will have the space elevator directly in front of it. And then it's just going to turn and it's going to gradually like display the entire city around it. And then it's just going to go into some built areas, and that's suddenly going to be all obscured again until it reaches the downtown. So that's where, you're going to see all the things up close. Right, so we're gonna build a couple of tram stops, of course. I suppose that I did them over here in this place a little bit closer than I would have liked. But again, this is one of those places where, doing things like a little bit further apart would be too far apart, but doing them close is just a little bit close. So there's no winning really. So I had to do some things, maybe how it would be in some denser areas, but it doesn't really matter in the end, and it's just looking nice. That's what counts. Actually, this place is not really gonna be like a low density suburb. I don't really want to do them in Asturis all that much. For example, when I did that little disconnected town on the side of that dam project, it's also not really like a low density suburb. It's kind of like a medium density disconnected self-sufficient town or something like that. So in this place we're gonna do like larger houses, not really like single family houses, and it's overall going to be some kind of medium density eventually. So it's just going to follow some kind of futuristic feel as well. I'm going to be using some futuristic buildings for that. But anyway, before we get there, we need to just complete some of these infrastructure things and continue some of the detailings, because this project, and that's also like another aspect of these kinds of connecting projects between different ones, is that you need to just continue the previously established details and some kind of things. So, for example, over here, from this side, from the city, from the direction of the city, there needs to be the continuation of this, like a promenade for that beach. So not only the beach must continue, but also these kinds of details that are on the side of it. So if you remember those two building episodes back, we established this like a very tall, like a seawall that's disconnecting the beach from the built areas. And this wall obviously needs to end somewhere. It must not end like just like that, but there needs to be some kind of terrain changes. There probably should be one more like stairs going down. So that's exactly what I had to do right there. And well, as you can see, there's also that one added benefit of these kinds of continuation projects, and that is you can just copy paste things, right? So that's exactly what I did with those stairs. Just seriously, completely, totally copy paste them into that area. So that went kind of fast. This, what I'm doing in here, I also had to redo like 3 times because the game was just crashing. It was not crashing just when I like touched that road, that one particular road, but when I touched that road and then did something else afterwards, like 5-10 minutes, and the game would just crash. So it was really weird to like trigger the crash with that road. It would just happen in some random intervals. So after that, I just started saving like every 3 minutes or so, and it was kind of painful to continue. But once I was done with that road, everything was absolutely fine again. So I don't know. For some reason, there are these things in City Skylines that just do not behave how you would expect them to. But the rest of the game is just okay. So yeah, it's weird, but it happens. Anyway, so I was done with that coastline, like rough outline of it. I'm not going to detail it right now because I was just doing that to just define some basic feel of the area. That's kind of what I usually do, right? I just want to build some sort of main elements and then just work my way towards the, let's say, lower detail levels or something like that. So I usually start with like some kind of networks and then roughly positioning the buildings, and then the detailing like trees and rocks, that's usually going to come later. Right, so what are these buildings? Now, these are buildings that are intended for some kind of Mars colony. I'm not really sure who made these buildings, but they're looking very futuristic. They're looking kind of minimalistic at the same time, but they are huge. They are supposed to be like maybe 4-floor buildings with those huge windows probably serving for 2 floors because they are really, really big. When I downloaded them from the workshop, I thought that these are going to be just some tiny houses that you can place like randomly in some kind of suburbs. Well, if you are not doing like a Mars colony project, that is. And it's just going to look like okay. But eventually, when I started placing these first ones, I realized, wait a minute, they are kind of big. So that's exactly what I was saying. This is not really going to be like a low density suburb, but it's actually going to be some sort of pretty dense residential estate, this particular block that I'm doing right here. So actually that tram stop right below this place is very well justified, I'd say. So, that turned out looking okay, even though it was not planned at all. I was really thinking that this is going to be just some kind of ordinary looking suburb, but yeah, it's not. Also, these buildings, the main reason why I picked them is because they have exactly these like huge windows going forward from the building. So that's absolutely perfect if you want to create some kind of area where you expect those houses to have a beautiful view somewhere. And in that particular place, they do, because they see the entire space elevator bay, the space elevator itself in front of them, and kind of the rest of the city. So that's exactly the reason why I also positioned those buildings so that those big windows are always aiming towards those, scenic places. So they are not really built perpendicularly to the streets or something. So that's the reasoning. Obviously, the buildings at the very back of that district are like that. They are just towards the road, because even if they were aiming to the bay, then there are the rest of the buildings that are blocking the view. So that would be kind of pointless. But at the same time, I just wanted to have some sort of density with those buildings. So there has to be some buildings like that. Anyway, that was just a rough outline of that area, like I mentioned, with the infrastructure and the buildings. Now, we are going to move into some different places of this entire project, because I want to do exactly that, but in different places, just so I can have a better idea about the overall feel, really, of this project, this place, and then I can just decide on that final detailing after I already know what needs to be done here. Right, so these are the tracks that we were already doing something to in that previous episode, because I was establishing that like a switch towards that cargo port, and there it needs to be, I already knew that there needs to be some kind of train station, so I already prepared the tracks for that, did these kinds of curves and bypasses and all these things. It's pretty much like a similar story to some of the previous train stations. As you can see, I'm even borrowing some details from the previous train stations, so it works exactly the same way. There are just going to be some kind of stairs towards the platforms, these kinds of elevators. The tracks are doubled so that there can be like a theoretical, like a bypass of this station. If there's like an express train that doesn't need to stop here, then it's just going to go on the inner tracks so that it's not going to be obstructed by the trains that are stopping here, by the local trains. And also, I suppose that this particular railway is also going to see cargo, obviously, because there is that switch towards the cargo port. Even though I think I did make the cargo port functional for the barges, of course, and for the trains, I'm not sure right now if I did that. But for some reason, the barges are just not really spawning at that point, at that port right now. They are spawning on the rivers, which is kind of strange because that's like much longer distance towards the space elevator. But right now, the cargo port doesn't really seem to be doing anything. But there are some normal, generic industrial buildings in that port as well, so there is some kind of cargo traffic going there. And I suppose that as the city grows and as the demand for cargo in and out of the space elevator grows as well, then we are just going to see much more traffic. But there's no point right now to be concerned about it, so it's absolutely fine. Now, let's talk about this train station. So, once again, in the city, I want to do something different with these stations. I really don't want to have like copy-paste train stations, so I don't think we ever did a station with like a main road directly below the platforms, so that's something new on its own. And also, this one is a little bit different because the tracks are on the ground. It's not like an elevated station like we did, I think, 3 episodes back or something, but it's actually the road that is sunken below the station. But at the same time, it's not really like a road going in a tunnel, right? It's just that these platforms and tracks are going over the road. There's going to be like an opening in the middle of those tracks to see the road. So yeah, it's not really going to be a tunnel, it's just a sunken road. And then I'm just using all this fake terrain, so procedural object, grass tiles, and the network profiles, and also these rocks on the side, because I really don't want to bother with these edges too much. I'm just going to hide them behind the rocks, and later, of course, so many trees. So it's going to be nicely blended together. And at the same time, the station is going to be super minimalistic. There's just going to be the tracks, platforms, some shelters, and access to the platforms. And that's literally it. Nothing more than that. So it's not really going to be like a super fancy station, but it's just going to be interesting in the overall setting, I suppose. So that's just going to be something new, something unique, something that Asturis really benefits from with these kinds of projects. Right, so that's going to be the rough outline of the train station. Again, I'm jumping between these projects today. There's just so many things. Yeah, I completely forgot in the introduction that we are also going to do a highway interchange. So this building project in Asturis is seriously having everything all at once. Because, well, we truly do need to do all these things if we want to finish this entire area. Well, anyway, so there's going to be another highway interchange. It's not like super necessary, but at the same time, it kind of makes a lot of sense because this road that is going from the highway, by the way, it's just going to be like a simple, like a one-way exit from the highway. It's not going to be anything special. It's going to be completely standard looking trumpet interchange. So there's going to be that one loop on the other on one side only, and then all of these ramps. So I've done that in some previous projects, not really in Asturis, but in Aurelia I've done these many times before. But well, in in Asturis we don't have it. So well, here it is. I really do want to have these interchanges somewhat unique with each project. So might as well just start with the more ordinary ones, I suppose. Well, anyway, where was I? Right, I was explaining why this interchange is kind of needed. So this main avenue that is going from the interchange, that's going below the train station, and it's going to kind of like bypass or go on the side of those higher density areas, you will later see. It's going on that first custom bridge that we did, the one that has kind of like the X shape with the railroad, that's exactly the same railroad, that goes on the top and then the road on the bottom. So there needs to be some kind of reason for that main avenue to even exist, because it's just a bit too big to just service only this area. So it's going to connect to the highway. Why not? There is only the highway connection on this side of the river in that previous project for the cargo port. But if there was like a traffic going on that cargo port interchange that would just want to continue to the rest of the city, it would probably not really work, because that interchange I don't think it has the capacity for that, and especially these roads or those roads leading from it. So this interchange just makes perfect sense, and it just fits here, really. So yeah, like I said, it's just a super ordinary trumpet interchange. There is always that detailing challenge with these highways, and that is making them blend to the normal surface roads. With these particular metropolitan state expressways, it's kind of difficult. They do behave similar to, for example, Shuto expressways. They don't really work all that well with the ordinary surface roads. So I, for example, had to use some of the like weird roads at first. Then I think I went for that ordinary grass median road. It's kind of important to do or to have some sort of median so that then you can use node controller and have those different split ways for the highway like offset from the center of it and just create like a seamless transition between them. I actually did something similar to that with that very first interchange that we did in this series. So it's the same technique and it looks all right, but it requires some specific roads to work with that. It's kind of difficult to tell in advance what's gonna work, what's not gonna work. So it's like a trial and error, really, with these kinds of interchanges. But that was that. I really did not want to spend a long time doing that interchange. I suppose that's also the reasoning why I picked just an ordinary good old trumpet interchange, and I was just done with it reasonably quickly. I was also doing some intersection marking tools, exactly the same. Exactly the same tools, exactly the same markings as on the rest of the highways in the city, so that there is the continuation of styles. At this point, I suppose I already realized that, perhaps I kind of bit off more than I can chew with this project, so I really just started to just finish these places where I'm going. So from now on, I'm not really gonna be doing like first some outlines of some places. No, let's just completely finish these blocks one by one and just work our way closer towards those first initial areas of today's project so we can just wrap it up. Because seriously, the footprint of today's project is probably the biggest in the entire series right now. There was a lot of work, a lot of buildings, a lot of things to place to just make this area complete. Right, so I moved into the very edge of this coastline area, and this is exactly that place on the side of that oldest custom bridge. Some 2 episodes back, or 3, I don't even know at this point, we did this coastline, this crazy futuristic looking coastline building, but I was explaining there that I only built it so that it's gonna look finished from the front because it's necessary for that tram ride video. So I did not do anything at the back of this block, so that's exactly what I need to finish. But since it's really gonna be just some sort of high density fill, I'm gonna use exactly that technique that I was using many times before in Asturis, or in Asturis as well already, but especially in Aurelia back in the day. So I'm gonna be heavily using these kinds of like procedural object versions of some generic warehouses or offices to just create that super high density inner yard with some kind of, loading bays, warehouses, these kinds of things. But most importantly, to obtain some sort of a roof in there that I can put some maybe props on, or it's just gonna be that technical, like high density stuff in the background that's really amplifying these kinds of high density blocks. I really like that. I really like that in the city center, of course, much more than in these places, I suppose. In here, I need to pay attention to not really overdo it too much, because these places gradually need to lower the density so that the city is basically going to end at some point. It's not going to continue forever. So, for example, with this block right here, I decided to use this building that I always forget the name of, because it's going to require, on its own, some sort of front yard, really, that's going to be empty. It's going to probably have some sort of entrance road and some sort of a little park in front of it. And then the very next block is going to somewhat more forcibly like lower the density even further. So in this particular block, I used that Russian elementary school, the kind of star-shaped building made by Vladex, I believe. And then from the same author, I think, that's that high school building on the side there. And this red brick building, I don't remember who made that one, but it's just like a big footprint building. It doesn't really come with any detailing, which is perfect for me, of course. Most importantly, it doesn't come with the surface below it. Even though right now I was already looking at the workshop, there is the new mod. I think it's called Building Control, and we can finally get rid of the surfaces of buildings. We don't need to use Surface Painter for that, because Surface Painter doesn't exactly work all that well with these kinds of detailing things. So yeah, there's Building Control. I haven't downloaded the mod yet, but I will for sure, because for some of these detailing tasks it's kind of crucial. So I was dealing with that by just using Surface Painter, and then just filling in the collateral damage really on the sides of roads with like procedural objects or some kind of props of surfaces, but that was just so tedious. I really don't want to do that anymore. So with Building Control, that's going to be much easier. So take a look at that if you have similar issues. Right, so I kind of was already finished with the buildings in that high density blocks, so I decided to just slap some trees around the finished areas. And now, before we move on, I'm just gonna take a look at the train station for the last time and just completely do all the details. But like I mentioned before, the train station is super simple. It really doesn't have anything like crazy going on it. It's just gonna be the tracks, platforms, shelters, entrances to the platforms, and that's it. Obviously, there are going to be some minor details. I'm going to put like a timetable there, maybe a couple of benches, lights, night lights, but that's seriously it. So it's actually going to be really minimalistic, but it's kind of going to stand out in this area because of its interesting shape. It has these split tracks because they need to have like a bypass for that cargo switch going in the center. And then I'm going to recolor those shelters to some kind of color that's going to be bright in this place, and it's going to be a good contrast. And that was it. That was seriously it. The train station is, like I mentioned already 1,000 times today, nothing all that special. Now I'm just going to finish some of these blocks around here. In here I wanted to build like a small little plaza. I was heavily looking at the first person views of the tram because I really want to prepare that scenery around here. So I created like a little plaza where the trams split or reach the road depending which direction you look at it, and just do some trees around it really. So it's not gonna look like the tram enters some kind of super high density built area, but there's some like gradual opening at the start of these built places. And then after that block, I'm just going to start doing these kinds of houses once more. So these are, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I was using these in Aurelia back in the day as well. I think they are, yeah, I have no idea where these are from real life. Maybe they are actually not from real life, but there's like a whole bunch of these buildings in a pack, so it's absolutely perfect to create some sort of neighborhoods like that. The buildings are reasonably modern as well, so they fit Asturis perfectly, and at the same time they are just a little more like generic, let's say, so I can place them in those back blocks so that those kinds of Mars structures on the coastline are going to stand out a little more. But at the end of the day, it's just like a fill in some of those back blocks. Right, and just like that, we have the buildings completely done. But seriously, in this project, in this episode, I probably placed the most buildings out of any building projects. Perhaps that little town on the side of those dams, you know, the one with pedestrian-only streets. Yeah, maybe there were more buildings than here. Well, actually, probably not, considering that I had to do all those high-density areas as well. And yeah, this is quite a huge project. Right, but this is probably the most satisfying part of it, and that is just the finishing natural touches. Once again, I was paying attention that this greenery is not going to obstruct the first-person view too much. I could easily just place all the highest, tallest palm trees all around the tram tracks, but I really don't want to obstruct the view, especially of the space elevator and the rest of the bay. So there's going to be like not that many trees where this tram exits this tunnel below this beacon hill that I also illuminated. I think I already did that in the past episode though. And then the tram is going to enter this kind of like a green tunnel really, because those pongum trees that I'm using, the big ones, they have this nice feature of being kind of narrow towards the bottom, and then they open up towards the top. So they are huge at the top. And because they are very tall as well, you can just make these kinds of like tunnels, yeah, green tunnels. I think I already attempted something similar like that next to the beach. I think you could have seen that in that tram ride video. But here I was doing that right from the start, specifically so that it's going to look like that. So hopefully it's going to pay off. I'm probably going to play with some detailing later when I actually go and record some kind of first-person rides here. But that's kind of far into the future still, because while we have the tram tracks and this tram line complete on this coastline, obviously in the rest of the city it's not. And I really don't have estimate right now, but maybe like 10 more episodes to build on this tram track on the rest of the city. No idea, maybe a little fewer than that, but we will see. So it's kind of like far in the future, but you know, it doesn't hurt to already prepare for it at this point. Right, so this first cinematic is just going to show this entire area, these 3 building projects all shown together. So you can see that entire coastline. So this place really has everything. It has the highways, the interchanges, train stations, the high density, low density, medium density areas. It has some industry, the cargo port, passenger port. It's kind of like a proper city district. At first I was afraid that it's going to turn into just some kind of outskirts, some kind of just suburb almost. But no, it didn't. It actually is like a proper continuation of the downtown. So that's very nice. We already have heavy traffic on these roads. That's also very nice to see. Although these are mostly just people moving into all those buildings because, I play mostly with the game paused. And when I unpause for the cinematics, obviously suddenly there are thousands new buildings for people to move in. So everyone does. Everyone eventually has to move here. And because I play paused, everyone's going to do it at the same time. But that's not really a big deal. It's just going to show a little bit more traffic in these cinematics. But that's exactly why I built those roads for that. So, it's kind of perfect. It's actually looking really good. These kinds of low angle shots are not really showing a lot of buildings, really, because it's all kind of hidden behind the trees. So if you were standing on some of these small islands, I suppose, maybe even if you were standing on the space elevator itself, you would not really see much in this area because it's just so green, so many trees around here. But that was the initial idea right from the start. So yeah, I suppose mission accomplished, really. But I just really hope it's going to look so much better even from the first-person view of the tram. I want to do the first-person view. I already said that, I think. I want to do it during the night. But maybe I'm going to do it at like late afternoon or something. I'm probably going to try to do something similar that I did in a previous ride, where I also had like tiny bit of light over the horizon so that, it's not going to be completely dark. Obviously, there are going to be lights everywhere, sure, like from the buildings and obviously street lights on the streets. But still, obviously, when going through some kind of a forest, we're not really going to see much, right? So I think I might experiment with doing it in like late afternoon so that everything is going to light up, yeah, but there's still going to be some kind of natural light. That's probably going to be preferred to some kind of complete blackness, really, which you're going to see in these cinematics in just a couple of moments here. So you can probably see that that's not exactly going to be the best idea. But maybe I can just tweak some settings to not make the night all that dark, but I don't know really. Right, this is going to be the final day shot, just overviewing this entire place, starting from that first custom bridge and kind of showing you actually where that main avenue goes. So it eventually just bypasses the high density areas, it goes on the side. I did the intersection marking tools there with those like with that square pattern in the center with the fill, which is symbolizing that it's the main avenue. And yeah, there is just that traffic on it, which is very satisfying. Right, this is gonna be the night shot. There is obviously that beacon here that shines the most. And as we move the camera closer to the center, we obviously see more and more brightness. So there are those bridges over one of the rivers, which are shining probably the most. And then there are all the buildings in the downtown and all the detailed colors and streets and everything. So that's going to just open up quite nicely. And I also did that one little detail here as well as I did in that pond with that previous train station. So I put like blue lights into the water so that during the night there is going to be this glow, just like a bioluminescent glow from the sea, just illuminating the rocks around it. That's going to look really good from the first person ride. I already saw that, of course, with that previous ride video, so that's exactly why I did it over here. Anyway, that is going to be it for today's Asturis. Thank you so much for watching it. Hope you liked it. If you did, then please do all the usual things below the video, clicking, writing, subscribing, and huge thanks to the channel members who directly support this channel, support me in what I'm doing. I really appreciate your support, guys. Thank you so much. Take care. Goodbye.